I want to introduce to you, and many of you know Lieutenant Governor Mike Kehoe. We are so privileged that Lieutenant Governor Kehoe is able to take time from his busy schedule to get here to St. Louis today, to be here with us. Mike has been a friend of BioSTL in so many ways from the time we first met when he was in the legislature to the time that he has now been, since he's been elected Lieutenant Governor, which I think was in November of 2020. He is a champion of innovation and science, a supporter of a strong business climate in Missouri. And apropos of our themes today, Lieutenant Governor Kehoe serves as the chairman of the Missouri Food, Beverage, and Forest Manufacturing Products Task Force. That's a long name for making sure that Missouri farmers and Missouri agriculture is competitive with value-added approaches. And Mike is leading that effort, helping to prepare Missouri family farms to meet agriculture and food production needs of the future. Among other things, Mike is a small businessman in many ways and a first-generation farmer. And again, so delighted that he is here with us, and I want to welcome up to the stage to say a few words.
Well, thank you, Don. It's a little embarrassing when your introduction is longer than your comments, but I appreciate it, Don. As Don mentioned, I am a huge fan of the BioSTL model and what Don and his team have been able to accomplish. It really, I don't know any other word to describe what BioSTL has done for the region and for the state, other than say that the one word I would say is game changer. They have been an incredible force in building awareness with many markets overseas about the innovative technology and the resources that we have in the St. Louis region. And so I want to thank Don and his team for doing such a great job of building that. Including at this Life Science Plant Science Center here, the Danforth Plant Science Center here. We are so fortunate to have this largest one like it in the world. We are so fortunate to have this right in our own backyard. It helps when you're trying to build relationships and technology and innovation when you have a facility like this right in our own backyard. It's fantastic. So we're super happy to be here and have you all with us today. Many of you very familiar with this center, so it's good. Great to be with our distinguished guest, Mayor Elbaz Starinsky. Did I get that pretty close? Very good. Consul General from Israel out of Miami. Thank you so much for being with us today. And Saud Al-Nowais. Got that pretty good? Great to have you out of D.C., but from the UAE Embassy in D.C., thank you so much for being here. I know earlier you had Congressman Ann Wagner here. I know Garrett Hawkins from Farm Bureau, both incredible champions of agriculture and what Missouri's doing in the future. Maggie Kost is here with us, our Department of Economic Development Director. Great to have Maggie on our team. I know Senator Steve Roberts was here earlier, but we also have Senator Brian Williams here today. Brian could wave. Brian is in the Missouri Senate and does a fantastic job. We are so fortunate to have people like Brian Williams in the Senate body. And on the other side of the House, as you know, Missouri has a Senate, which we call the upper chamber, but then we have the House of Terrorists, the House of Lords. The Speaker of the House, Representative Dean Plocher from right here in St. Louis. Dean is a St. Louisan, but he is a son of Missouri. He has done a great job building relationships. You see Dean and Brian from two different parties sitting next to each other because they understand the only way to move Missouri forward is to actually govern. You know, it's a unique idea out there these days that they can have a conversation and build relationships. So those are two people that I am a huge fan of. It's great to be here with a major innovation hub here in St. Louis, which is home to global agri-food businesses, research institutions, national and state farming associations, investors, and startups. Some of St. Louis's agricultural assets include people here from Bayer, Nestle Purina, Bunge, and AB InBev. The strength of Missouri agriculture is something many people in this room know, but we can't stop talking about so much. Last year, $3.7 billion industry, put us in the top 10 of all agricultural leaders nationally. We're second in family farms with over 95,000 family farms. Third in beef cattle production, as Don mentioned, 40 years into the cow-calf beef cattle production business. So very proud of beef cattle production. And most people don't know we're fourth in rice production. That's something that's unique and new to many folks who hear that, but not unique and new to the Boot Heel area of our region, which is under harvest now and almost actually complete with harvest. We have some great opportunities here in Warren County. We just announced just a couple of months ago, broke ground on AFG, American Food Group's beef processing plant. It'll be the first one like it in Missouri. They're going to produce about 2,500 steers, to process about 2,500 steers a day. As a cattle producer, that's great news for us because in the beef business, to fatten our cattle, we're sending them out west where the processing plants are, mainly to Kansas and Nebraska, because there's no processing plants here. And the processing plants won't move here because they say, well, there's no fat cattle here. And so now we've got this relationship, Maggie and her team, along with Warren County commissioners and the governor's team, and just a whole variety of people got together and said, we have to land this business here. It's a huge impact to Warren County, I believe, a $450 million investment, some 12 to 1,300 jobs. Super happy that we have AFG coming right here to this side of the state. And 50% of the U.S. agriculture is produced within a 500-mile radius of St. Louis. So you literally are in the hub of where agriculture happens. Our statewide train allows a lot of diversity, as I mentioned, cattle production and rice production, but also soybeans, corn, pork, forest products, huge industry in our state, our Missouri forest products, pet foods, et cetera. We have a lot of variety to produce here. And value-added efforts, and I'm going to end talking about the task force that Don just mentioned. I mentioned we have a $93.7 billion industry. Out of that 93.7, about $35 billion is what we call value-added agriculture products. The research that we did with the Missouri Food and Forest Products Task Force indicates we can almost double that in the future. And we think we have a way to grow that 35 billion piece of the value-added agriculture up to 71 billion. That is an incredible opportunity as we're talking with partners from around the world and as we're talking with the people who want to get into agriculture, mainly our youth. I think it's important to be able to show what we're able to do. The Missouri Food and Beverage Task Force that Don talked about was commissioned by acting Governor Mike Kehoe, Don. When the governor leaves town, I do all kinds of stuff. So I made myself the chairman. It was kind of self-serving. Governor Parson asked me, who's the chairman? I said, well, I am, boss. You were gone. But the quality people that are on that, you mentioned Garrett Hawkins earlier, but Chris Chin, our Director of Agriculture, who's a rock star, one of Maggie's peers that serves on the cabinet, and a guy named Chris Daubert, who's a food scientist and the dean of our School of Agriculture off at Mizzou, as well as all of the other commodity groups representation, so the cattlemen's and the pork producers, soybean, corn, et cetera, all have a seat at the table as we work on how we move this agriculture industry to the next level in the state of Missouri. We came up with two things, and I just want to talk about them really quickly because they're unbelievable. The first is an acronym MOFIN. It stands for Missouri Food Entrepreneurial Network. It's the first time in the Missouri history that we took every public institution that teaches agriculture, secondary institution, so community colleges, four-year colleges, et cetera, brought all of their agricultural deans and leaders and professors together in one group and start saying, how do we together move agriculture forward? In the past, they were all in their separate silos, doing their separate research. Some of them were doing 2 or 3 of the same research at 2 or 3 different campuses, didn't know it, didn't communicate with each other. That group has now met 4 times in 6 months, and we've already collaborated on several things that we can work together on. Lincoln University, a land-grant university in Jefferson City, Missouri, and the University of Missouri now, also land-grant university, now are working together. They were working separately on hemp seed production. We were just talking earlier about hemp production, which is a value-added idea that we think Missouri can champion. All of our hemp seed now, if you want to grow hemp in the state of Missouri, you have to buy it from China. It's tough to get, unreliable, quality, we don't know what we're getting. So our universities now are working together as an example of the MOFIN process to work collaboratively to develop that seed production. And the other piece that we came out of is called MO5. It's the Missouri Food, Beef, Fiber, Fuel, and Forest Institute, which is a mouthful as well. But essentially what that's doing is finding out what those products have and what we can do to build value added into that area as well. The processing facility we talked about in Warren County would be a great example of that. That's a value added piece of agriculture economics that we are not doing now. So the more opportunities we can get to build on that, the better off we're going to be. We have an incredibly strong Department of Agriculture recognized around the world for what we're able to do with great leaderships and fantastic commodity groups throughout our state that are always partnering with us to figure out a way in Missouri's family-owned farms to move things forward. I am incredibly humbled to be able to be in the position I stand before you today. I'm from St. Louis, North St. Louis City, and to be able to go through the journey that I've went through and now be able to serve all Missourians in Jefferson City is something every day I quite can't frankly believe that I'm a part of. But it's something I'll never forget. I love giving back to the state. I love being able to talk to groups about innovation, technology, and how we can move forward, and how Missouri and the St. Louis region is absolutely the leader across not only the United States, but a leader across the world in what we can do globally. Thank you so much for having me here today. Thank you for getting together. Thanks for the idea, Mayor. So that came from you. I think, did Don fund it, or did you have to put the money up too? I got it. I appreciate it. Have a great convention, and thank you so much for having me be a part of it.
I'd like to also now bring up Maggie Kost. Maggie is the acting director of Missouri's Department of Economic Development. The Department of Economic Development worries about everything that has to do with our economic growth, everything that has to do with our economic growth in Missouri, including bringing companies from around the world to Missouri and our workforce and lots of other things. And I'm pleased to say that as one of the follow-ups to this event, perhaps coincidental, Maggie and I and Senator Williams and Mayor will be in Israel. We'll be in Israel. And then we'll be in UAE. So, and the future soon-to-be Speaker of the House, I better not forget, will also be on that trip. But we're gonna, so that is a trip that Governor Parson is leading, and looking forward to traveling with Maggie. But come say a few words. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much for that kind introduction, and certainly to our delegation from Israel and from the UAE, and to Don and BioSTL for hosting us today. Such important conversations that we had this morning. We talked about a lot of different challenges that are out there that certainly have an influence on the prosperity of all of our countries, and so they're important conversations to have. One of the things that we talked about that came up over and over, if you notice, was the pandemic. And I think it's a good example of a global challenge that we all sort of faced. And it was an example that magnified some of the other challenges that were out there, the cracks that already existed in our global economy that were sort of heightened by the pandemic. And I think that there's an instinct to react to that in one of two ways. One way is to sort of turn inward and to maybe retreat and recede from that challenge, and the other way is for us to sort of unite and tackle that challenge together. And I think today is a great conversation that we need to have and a great way to tackle these global challenges together. So I'm so excited that we are all here together. Now, I have to say, though, that there was one innovation that we talked about today that I'm a little skeptical of, and that is the artificial minister of artificial intelligence. I don't know if we want to bring that technology over. Maybe for my own job security, though, is why I'm a little concerned there. All joking aside, though, I'm excited actually on the trip to be able to visit with the Minister of Artificial Intelligence. It's exciting to see that innovation and to be able to learn from each other in that way. The other thing that I think is really important about today is that I truly believe that developing our economies, that business can be one of the greatest tools in a diplomat's toolbox. The more that we intertwine our economies, the more that we trade between countries, the greater stability that we will have, and we talked about that this morning as well. Doing business leads to peace. And that is exciting, and an exciting reason for us to be here today, to drive innovation, to drive these relationships between our countries and between our businesses and our private sector as well. So excited to be part. I don't think anyone has ever complained about a speaker going short, so I'm going to leave it there. Enjoy the conversation this afternoon. There's lots of great work to be done. Thank you all so much for having me.
And now, I have the pleasure of introducing our keynote speaker. Those of us who've been here this morning have already met Anya Eldman. We are so pleased to have Anya here and tremendously impressed. She flew in from Israel and arrived last night, right before dinner. Was up most of the night, of course, because who can sleep when you're such an exciting event coming up the next day. And she's heading back tomorrow, back to Israel. So, so appreciative that Anya, that you would come in and make that sacrifice and be here with us. Anya has had many stages or phases to her storied career. The aspect that I will focus on is her 7 years at the Israel Innovation Authority. Those of us who've been working there for a while remember that as the chief scientist's office for many years. Anya was there until just March of this year and led the startup division, and as such, truly was one of the architects of the vaunted Startup Nation ecosystem. And it's an honor for us, I think, to be able to have someone to, we often hold up the Israel innovation economy and the Startup Nation and wonder how can we copy that and what can we learn from that. Well, we have one of the architects here today, and it's my pleasure to invite Anya Eldman up to the stage. Thanks, Anya.
So I don't know if it's worth speaking before people eat lunch or after they eat lunch and they're sort of... So what made Israel a startup nation? I don't know how many of you know Israel, so I'll just say we're about 9 million people. We have about 9,000 startups. These startups raised $27 billion in 2021. 2022 is not similar, but it's getting very close. So the first half was already very close to the last year. We have about 400 research facilities by multinational companies, and that is tremendous. It's been a tremendous help to us, and getting the multinationals engaged with the ecosystem, I think, made a lot of a difference. So how did it happen? And we always asked about this, and everybody has their own pet theory. So our previous president, Shimon Peres, used to say, Israelis are never happy, they're never satisfied. Everything they see, they want it to be different, better. They always think they know how to do something better. So there you go. My pet theory is a little different, and I think it's because we have a Friday dinner every Friday night with all of our family. I don't know if you people do that, but every Friday night we have dinner with all the brothers and their husbands and wives and their children and sometimes their parents and this gets boring so quickly. So eventually people end up complaining. So a physician there is talking about problems he has and how he lost a patient because he didn't have the solution. And his son-in-law, the engineer, says, wait a minute, I think I know how to solve that, and a new startup is born. So this is my joke that I keep repeating. It gets old. So let me give you 9 points why I think Israel became a startup nation, and you can count so you know the end is clear. So there's a very strong academic research. We tend to have very deep technology in Israel, and a lot of it is transferred from the academy. But having successful academic research is not enough. You really need a very good tech transfer model. And we're struggling and complaining, but I think we probably have one of the best tech transfer models in the world. So every university has KPIs on how much technology they transfer into the industry. We also provide specific focused support for applied research. So Israel Innovation Authority is not funding basic research, but it does fund application research. And we spend a lot of time incentivizing researchers to do applied work. We do some very focused work. So for example, a couple of years ago, we started a Bio-Convergence initiative where biology meets engineering, AI, and so forth. And we started giving larger grants if they have 2 researchers from different disciplines. So that created a lot of interest because all of a sudden it was 50% more money. So they were like, okay, we want to talk to those nano people. Where do you find them? So then we did a lot of work on putting them all together. So that's one. This is in no particular order, just what came to me this morning. So in the 90s, we had 1 million Russian immigrants. And it changed the country. That was like, I think, 15 or 20% growth of population in a couple of years. And those were very highly skilled engineers. It really made a big difference. I mean, at that time we complained because all those Russians came and they're taking our jobs and they all want to have a villa in the Volvo. Haven't heard that for a while. But that's what they say. I'm Russian, I was born in Moscow, so I've heard the villa and the Volvo thing. But that created a huge infusion of completely different mindsets. And you know, diversity is very important in terms of innovation. So having different mindset, different thinking, different skills was very, very instrumental. Of course, the Defense Ministry has technological units. They train a few thousand people every year. These people leave the units very, very well educated, and they are the backbone of the high-tech industry. A lot of them do, most of them do some sort of STEM degree or sometimes 2 degrees before they actually leave the army. Entrepreneurial spirit. So they say Israelis have entrepreneurial spirit. I don't really know what it means. But I think risk-taking is where we're different from others. And this is something that's encouraged very early on. So the kids, very young age, they go off on their own. They don't tell their parents what they're doing. It's like this whole culture. And then they go to the army at the age of 18, and they're expected to make serious decisions at that time. And then when they finish the army, they go to India for a year. Everybody finished the army, they go to India or to South America for a year, mostly India. So again, they're very independent, they take risks. We actually encourage risk-taking. So for example, with the government incentive programs, we try to support the highest risk companies. And if they fail, they don't have to return the money to us. So we tell them it's okay, you know, take risks. And if you fail and next year you have another idea, come back again, we'll fund you again. We especially like return entrepreneurs, whether they succeed or not. These are the people who really fight for their ideas. So now I'm going to say, I wrote innovative and brave government innovation policy that made a difference. And this, most of what I say is before my time, so it's not just saying I did a great job. But the Office of Chief Scientist and the Innovation Authority has been, it's just a new name more or less, has been around for 35 years. So 35 years ago, somebody established an office and said, we really need to encourage technology and innovation. I think innovation was not a popular word at that time. But basically the idea was, we don't have water, we don't have oil, we don't have natural resources. We need to look at somewhere else for the advantage. And this office had a very similar policy over the years, and especially in the last few years that I know of it. And the policy is very strange. It's kind of weird policy, so politicians don't like it so much. And the policy is we're the highest risk taker in the sector. So when we provide money, we know how much of the money we want to get back. And I'm not gonna, usually I give a quiz, but I'm not gonna do it to you because you just had your lunch. We want to get about 40% of our money back. So our money is not a venture money. We don't take equity. It is a conditional grant. If the project fails, you don't return it. If the project succeeds, you return it as royalty of sales. So about 40% of the budget is based on returns. It doesn't sound like a very good financial scheme, right? But the idea is we're looking for financial benefit. We're looking for economic benefits, not financial. So we want to see the Israeli high-tech hub very competitive, very successful, and it seems to be working okay so far. And the idea is we don't take the position of the private sector. We just want to reduce the risk. So if you look at cyber sector, maybe 6 years ago, the government put money in cybersecurity. Today, nothing goes into that sector because there's tons of private money. Every company that says cyber gets funded. We don't do anything in that space anymore. But climate, okay, that's difficult to fund. That's long term. We invest there. New alternative proteins or food tech in general, we're there. Healthcare, of course, high risk, we're there. So the idea of this office is we want to take the highest risk. Most of the support is very early stage, of course, applied research, startups, very early companies, because we want the private sector to pick it up together with us. So we never give 100% of anything. Always, even from the very beginning, private sector gives some of the money, because eventually the government support pulls back. So I call it brave policy because it's very difficult to explain. So every couple of years we have a new treasury. You know, I don't know how it works here, but in Israel the Treasury Department runs the world. And they're 27-year-old smart guys coming out of college, and they come in and they don't get it. So in my 7 years with the government, I had 3 teams. I had to explain why this is such a strange policy. And it's very hard to measure. So the only thing you can say, well, it seems to be working, right? So that's why it's brave, but we've been keeping it forever. So I think there are a couple of elections now and then in Israel, and through every different government, this office was not touched. So it's not a political office in any way. Every government comes in and understands that this is doing something good for the economy. Okay, I'm gonna skip one. I talked about multinationals. Every 3 years when I have a new team coming to Treasury, they say, why are we giving money to multinationals? And I said, no, we're not giving them money. We're giving them incentive to work with the ecosystem, to bring their knowledge, to teach our startups how to scale, to help our startups reach global markets. And we give them very small incentive for that. It's very, very hard work. But I truly believe that large companies can really create a lot of influence for innovation ecosystem. And they're willing to work with entrepreneurs and with researchers, and you really can harness them. They don't need so much money. They just need to see the reason for that. And the reason, we call it open innovation. So they have to be, I always tell companies, okay, what are you looking for? And they give me a list, and I say, no. If you know what you're looking for, you're not doing open innovation. Open innovation is seeing around the corner, is what's happening to your market, it's changing, and if you don't notice, all of a sudden you're gone. That's open innovation. It's how you take risk outside of your current strategy. And when they get it, they work with the innovators. And I think that's a very big influence on Startup Nation. Strong international collaborations. We've always had international division. We have bilateral agreement with, I think, 66 countries, which is quite a lot if you think about it. We have 3 or 4 funds, Israel, US, like a Bird Foundation and Bird Energy and so forth. And we actually have a program with Florida, right? More, Space Agency. We have lots of collaboration with hospitals and universities, and it's all government to government, or government to private sector. There are different models, and it's been very, very helpful. Because if you think about it, Israel doesn't really have a local market. By the way, Innovation Authority will not support a company that says it's going to sell in Israel. The first definition is global market. So Israeli startups are really born as global companies because they don't have a choice. So when they come to, let's say, to the government and ask for money, we say, okay, who did you talk to? And they say to this food company in Israel, we say, okay, did you talk to any big food companies? And being global is a big advantage because companies that are opened in the area where they have local market, they don't have to work so hard. So they start with local market, and by the time they finish the local market, they miss the opportunity globally. So this is a good thing of being small, far away. And the last thing I want to say is that we've been very strictly bottom-up. So for many, many years, the Innovation Authority would only support programs that came to it. So very reactive. We get about 5,000 proposals a year, 3,000 to 5,000, depends on the year. If the situation is good, we get less. If the situation is bad, we get more. And always the decision was bottom-up. So we would look at cancer drug together with cyber, and just compare them based on certain criteria that we devised. And I promised somebody, I mentioned the criteria, so I'll say it in a second. But what happened in the last few years is that we realized that apart from doing bottom-up, which means not targeting, we also have to look at emerging trends. So I will talk later about alternative proteins and what we did. But for example, that's one area where the regulators are not really sure what they're going to do, okay? So FDA still hasn't published instructions on what they're gonna do with cellular meat. And just because they don't know. It's a food regulator that all of a sudden gets biotech companies to come to them. So if the government is not taking a position of working with the regulator, it's not happening. So we decided to build, that's the division I led, to build a ecosystem division, to work on emerging ecosystem with the idea not to dedicate funds. We never said, we like Bio-Convergence, let's put $500 million, no. We said, we like Bio-Convergence, what should we do to have more interesting companies in that space? And a lot of what we did was not financial. A lot of it is meetup, is global collaborations, it's regulatory work. It's convincing the educators that they need to educate people differently because biologists and engineers don't talk the same language. So we asked the university, can you train people to learn both? So a lot of that goes into this building ecosystem development. And I think at least in Bio-Convergence and alternative proteins, which is the 2 projects that I led, we see good results. We see a tremendous growth in the number of companies. We see huge amount of investors that are coming, and companies are growing. In food tech, we had last year I think 6 or 7 companies who raised over $100 million Series A, which is a big thing because most of the money comes from abroad. So I think somewhere a combination of bottom-up, not targeting, not deciding, you know, this province should do food tech and this province should do cyber, which doesn't work, but understanding what is a potential in a particular space and what barriers are there and what can we do to remove the barriers to make the private sector more successful. That's it. Thank you.